Dear all, a very warm welcome to students and employees here at SDU and everyone else listening in today. My name is Mads Tordal Fransen and I'm an associate professor of physics here at the Department of Physics, Chemistry and Pharmacy, and it's my pleasure to host this afternoon's sustainability live session. This is going to be a virtual wonderland of research mixed media from the Faculty of Natural Science here at the University of Southern Denmark. So the videos and talks you'll be presented with today, they introduce a wide range of research, which all in particular connect to strategic development goals. And the purpose of today is to generate discussions and stimulate ideas as far as this COVID-19 constricted format allows. So in particular, we hope you will use the Q&A button at the bottom right panel of your Zoom to post questions during the presentations and after. So you will not be able to talk yourself, but if you post your questions using Q&A, then I will read out selected questions to the speakers. So please do that. Now, briefly about our program today. We will begin shortly with an introductory talk by Pro-Rector Sebastian Mernild, followed by the possibility to ask hopefully one or two questions. Then we will have presentations by 5 researchers from the faculty, different departments. First, we will show a short video about their research, and then the researchers themselves will give a very brief follow-up talk. And then during this, you will have the opportunity to post again questions, and I will post some of these questions to the speaker after the talk. At the end, our Dean of the Natural Science Faculty, Marianne Holmer, will give some final remarks. And we end at 4:30. As a very first thing, before introducing Sebastian, I would ask you to participate in a little poll about who you are. So this should come up now. Yeah, you should see this poll on your screen now. Excellent, thank you very much. There's still a few ticking in. I think we're... Yes, I think we're more or less there. We can close the poll. Very good. Thank you very much for this. It's great to have an idea of who you are. So there's a mix of students, employees, and also others listening. That's great. So for our very first presentation, sorry, I just have to ask, should I share the results? Great. I think you've all seen the results now. Very good. So for our first presentation, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce Sebastian Mernild. Sebastian is a professor of climate change and glaciology at the University of Bergen in Norway, and he's our very recently appointed pro-rector here at SDU. Among many accomplishments, Sebastian is the lead author of the upcoming 2021 assessment report on climate change of the IPCC, so the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change. And in more local waters, he is, again, among many other things, the 2018 recipient of the prestigious Rosenkjær Prize for Research, Dissemination and Outreach. So with that, I invite Sebastian to share his slides.
Yeah, thank you, Mads. Okay, can you see my slide?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, thank you, Mads, and thank you for the introduction, and thank you for giving me some minutes to speak to all of you today. I will give you a brief introduction, or I will talk briefly about the SDGs, and how we can use those in like a cross-disciplinary approach. Coming up with some examples actually from your own faculty, but also try to make some perspectives regarding this. We all know that the SDU strategy is related to the SDGs, and it's about like create value for society. It's about developing talents, and it's about shaping a sustainable future. This is three key and core topics, I think, when we are facing and looking into our global challenges. And from my point of view, I think it's very important when we talk about like global challenges that we have in focus these three core values listed here, but also that we work across disciplines in like research, education, outreach, but also due to collaboration. Because if not, in my point of view, I think it's difficult to solve these big challenges we are facing nowadays. And this is a slide I used last week for the board meeting, and this is highlighting interesting cases from your own faculty where you have the SDGs in focus. And what is common for this faculty, for your faculty, Faculty of Science, is that you actually work with all 17 SDGs, but you have a specific focus like on number 4.
Jeg mistede lyd på Sebastian.
Er det okay nu? Ja.
Ja,
Okay.
der er stadigvæk lyd på, Sebastian.
Sebastian, maybe you can turn on. Can you turn on your video?
Is it better now?
Ja, perfekt.
Okay, yeah, but you have focused like on number 4, quality education, number 12, like responsible consumption and production, and then 14, life underwater, together with like a broader focus and perspective on the other 17. And if you look at this slide, you can see that there are some quite interesting initiatives, I think, regarding our SDGs, and I'll just highlight a few of those, which is like the work with sustainable batteries, phosphorus recovery, cybersecurity, encryption, artificial intelligence. And this is done in collaboration with the hospital regarding like lifestyle, diabetes, and diseases. We have these 1-year subsidiary courses, one in like climate adaptation, which has recently been approved, and one in like environmental and chemical project management. So I think regarding the Faculty of Science, you are really broad in your perspective regarding the SDGs, and you're reaching out in many different kind of disciplines. And also the SDGs is clearly like integrated in your courses, in your education of students. So I think I really like this slide because it also highlights the diversity at the faculty, but also that you are reaching out like in many different kind of aspects, both internally at the university, but also like outside the university in different ways. But if we look at like top 3, the SDGs, which is like top 3 at the different faculties, including your faculty, I did this analyze here for the 5 different faculties. And one thing which is of interest, I think, is that each faculty has different kind of fingerprint, right? But also similarities when we compare like the top 3 different kind of SDGs at the different faculties. We also see, and the similarities somehow indicates that we see a collaboration like across the different faculties, but also that there are some topics where we still have a way to go. We still have possibilities to develop our science, education, collaboration issues, and so on. And especially one thing which has been a part of my scientific career is the goal 13 regarding climate and climate change. So I think regarding this as a core topic, we still have a way to go at SDU so far, but I think we have a plan so far for this in the next coming years. But if we compare all the different initiatives at SDU and we make this solar plot, we can see that we are really broad in our work with the SDGs, even though that we have different kind of focus areas, as mentioned before, regarding the 5 different faculties. But more or less, we work broadly with all the 17 SDGs. And again, I think this is very nice illustration, and it indicates to me that the SDG is very broadly represented at SDU. And by saying this, I think we can only succeed in our research by looking into these cross-disciplinary approaches, and that can be seen at different kind of levels, both regarding individual researchers, but also at group level, institute level, faculty level, at university level. So I think it's important when we either apply for external funding, like projects, or we just go down the hallway. I think it's important to have this in our mindset, that this cross-disciplinary approach is quite important if we want to succeed in our research, in our education, but also if we want to succeed trying to solve those global challenges we are facing. And how can we do this? Yeah, in my point of view, I think that science-based innovation, as listed here, is absolutely like the way to approach these challenges. And that can either be like, for instance, nature or technical-based solutions. And it comes with, the way I see it like with innovation, but also to reach out with like a broader community in like an international perspective. And here I think outreach is quite important, because if we are not able to reach out to the different communities, to the scientists, to different universities, from my point of view, I think it's very difficult to get like a high impact influence regarding our science we do, but also regarding the education we are serving for our students. And again, we're living in this society where we cannot like stand alone, where we need to work across disciplines. And we have to do this like also to transform like our society into the future, because one of the challenges we are facing among a lot is, for instance, that we want to reduce our greenhouse footprint. And for instance, the political agenda is headed towards 2050, sorry. And by reaching this goal, I think like overall, we need to keep in mind the SDGs, but again, how we work across disciplines, because if we don't succeed in those 2 components, in my opinion, I think it will be very, very difficult, for instance, to reach this zero net emission target in 2050. And there are many other targets we can approach due to the SDGs, but this is one which has been close to my research career through history. So yeah, so bottom line, I think from my point of view, I think the SDGs is quite important in our research, in our education of young people, because down the road, our students, they will become ambassadors for the SDG in the future. And I think as a university, we have a huge task to educate them and to train them towards the SDGs, but also towards this mindset that they work across disciplines to reach out and to fulfill some of the big challenges we are facing as a society. And I know that those 5 YouTube videos you will see hereafter, is 5 good examples, case studies of how the SDGs are used, how they are developed at your Faculty of Science. So yes, I think I will stop my short presentation here. And in case we have questions, then feel free to ask.
Okay, thank you very much, Sebastian, for setting the frame for this live session and setting the ambition. We have time for a quick question. I don't see anyone right now in the Q&A, so you will have to type fast. Otherwise, maybe I can ask a quick question. Where, if it's appropriate, where do you see the biggest challenge in modeling and projecting climate, making the future prognosis for climate? I mean, currently. Oh, you are muted, Sebastian.
No, yeah, it's a big question, and
it's a big question, so maybe it doesn't make sense for a short answer.
Take time to answer that, but I think, like, in our physical understanding about the atmosphere, we have a big challenge because the atmosphere is a driver for many processes on Earth, and if we do still have uncertainties in our model estimates, but we need to narrow down those estimates, because if not, then we will see uncertainties down the road. So I think we have good models, but we also have less good models. But I think one of our key targets, and also especially in the IPCC perspective, we have been discussing that one of our recommendations is that the model development community should have even more possibilities to develop models to become even more accurate in the future, right? And this is, I think this is a big challenge, that what we all are depending on in Earth system science research is that it's mainly, if we look into the future, is that models should be more precise compared to what they are today. Not only precise, physically precisely, but also that we should narrow down all the uncertainties regarding our estimates, and how one environment is linked up to other environments. And that could be like these feedback mechanisms we see, which has over time become even more important compared to earlier days, right? We see now speed up our feedback mechanisms, which we haven't seen earlier at a same rate compared to what we see today. So this is one of our assessment in the IPCC, which will be hopefully faced next summer. So this is a place where we should likely put more effort into the science, and where we can be even better compared to where we are today.
I don't know if I didn't see it. There's 2 questions that I've typed in. We don't have much time left, but there is a question whether in the overview of SDG focus, SDG 2 was not mentioned for NAT. Now, I don't remember what SDG 2 is off the top of my head, I have to say. Maybe the person writing this should just specify what SDG 2 is. I don't remember them off the top of my head. And the question is if you see NAT working in this field. Let me just see. Health. Sorry. SDG 2 is the health.
It's number 3, but never mind. Yeah.
So probably health was mentioned, but the probably.
But yeah, but I just highlighted like the top 3 SDGs at the Faculty of Science. But as I mentioned, all of them are used, integrated in your work at the faculty. I just made this top 3 to do a comparison, like between the different faculties, to show where different compared to others, but where there's also overlaps. So yeah.
Okay. So I think with this we have to, in the interest of time, we have to move on. And on behalf of the audience that we can't hear, unfortunately, this framework, so I will say thank you very much to you, Sebastian, for this introduction. There's a few other relevant questions. I think we can pass them on in a different setting. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So we now move to our 5 researcher presentations. So the way this will be done is I will briefly introduce first the researcher, then we will see a short video on the researcher's research and connections to SDG, and then a brief follow-up talk by the researcher. And during this, please feel free to ask questions, and we will try to select questions from your list as good as possible. Okay, so our first researcher, I'm very happy to introduce Sara Egemose. She's an associate professor at the Department of Biology. Her primary research interests are in freshwater ecology and climate adaptations, but she's also very involved in engaging the public in her research in the context of citizen science. And I think we'll hear about both in her video presentation. So please go ahead and let's see Sara's video.
Som forskere har vi ikke kun ansvar for at formidle vores forskning. Vi skal også integrere omverdenen og hjælpe med at skabe holdbare og tværfaglige løsninger. Derfor samarbejder jeg rigtig tit med eksterne partnere. Det kan være kommuner, forsyningsselskaber, virksomheder og borgere. Det er en meget vigtig del af min tilgang til forskning. Den forbindelse, der bliver skabt til borgerne, kan være meget forskellig. Nogle involverer sig kun perifært og deltager for eksempel ved at tage en prøve og aflevere den, og så er det det. Andre ender med at blive det, man kalder superborgere. Altså de involverer sig virkelig nærmest med hud og hår, og man ender med at få en rigtig tæt relation til dem, fordi man kommer til at kende dem igennem lang tid eller over år. Jeg har et samarbejde, som nu kører på 13 år med en lystfiskerforening, og dem kender jeg selvfølgelig utrolig godt og har en meget tæt relation til. Så det er meget forskelligt. Jeg forsker i ferskvandsøkologi, klimatilpasning og natur- og miljøkvalitet. Og jeg vil rigtig gerne bidrage til at løse både nationale og globale udfordringer. Altså til at finde bæredygtige løsninger. Det gælder for eksempel klimatilpasningsløsninger i byerne og i det åbne land, som minimerer effekterne på natur og miljø, eller metoder til at opnå et bedre vandmiljø igennem vådområdeprojekter, sørestaurering eller naturbaserede løsninger. Hvorfor har vores natur og miljø det, som den har det? Hvorfor er det, at biodiversiteten falder? Hvorfor er det, at vores søer er grønne om sommeren? Og så videre, og så videre. Og den eneste måde, synes jeg, at man kan bidrage til det, er jo ved at formidle sin viden, men også ved at inddrage borgerne aktivt. De vil jo også gerne vide, hvad er det, vi kan gøre for at gøre den her verden til et bedre sted. Det bedste ved at være forsker er, at jeg kan gøre en forskel. Mit navn er Sara Egemose, og jeg er forsker.
Okay, and with that, I would like to give the word, pass the word on to Sara herself, and just remind everyone that you are very welcome to ask questions during the video and also during Sara's presentation. Sorry, go ahead, Sara.
Yes, thank you very much, Mads. Just after Sebastian's talk in the beginning, I was sitting thinking a little bit about that. For me, the sustainability goals is actually a part of my mindset, a very natural part of my mindset. And I think it's the way that we have to think of it, not only as a researcher, but also as a citizen. We shall succeed in solving all the global challenges that we are facing. And if we have to do that or should do that, then it's not only important to do research and innovation to take the big steps, but also that we get the citizens to understand the importance and the role of their own actions. And here I think that both we and SDU can have a big influence in supporting that. I'm very happy to have been invited to join this session today, as it will show how I and some of my colleagues from other departments are working with sustainability within very different scientific areas. Because solving global challenges or developing sustainable solutions require not only my research or other single researcher scientific disciplines, but as Sebastian also says, research transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and not least also cooperation with industry, stakeholder and policymakers to really take the needed steps forward. So thank you for letting me participate.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for this. And we have time for questions. This was very succinct.
Maybe I can ask one.
Yeah.
Can all hear me?
Yes.
Also you, Sarah? Yes.
Yes, I can, man.
Yes. So Sarah, thank you for this presentation. I'm wondering, we are also discussing here, we have the Faculty of Science with us today. Do you collaborate or do you see others that you could, would be relevant for your research in the SDGs?
Yes, definitely. And I also already have ongoing collaboration with others, and currently I am collaborating with others in a Green Deal application, which is submitted within a month. Not only other researchers at Faculty of Science, but actually also researchers at other faculties at SDU. So that's definitely possible, and that's also why I really like an arrangement like this today, because it also gives, it also shows the very broad scientific areas that we are working in, and maybe also get us to know more about each other's research.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe while we wait for questions to tick in, if there are any, maybe I can also ask a question. So a very practical level, have you published research where citizens have been directly involved in, for example, bringing in data?
Yes, I have. I have published, I mentioned in the video, this cooperation with the fishermen, and those data is a very long time series taken in lakes that have been restored, and those data are published. The first were published back in 2011, and the last year in 19. And I have also published data from stormwater ponds, so climate adaptation related data, which was taken by local citizens, because they are there, they are walking with the dog every morning and passing the ponds, so they can take the samples when we need them. So yes, that I have them.
So I think actually I have somehow I have delay on the questions popping in here, because I see that a question has arrived, but I don't see it. I think I see the text. Or maybe they're not entering in order. Maybe
I can say it.
Yeah.
It's a question from Carla Tar. How do you see colleagues within NAT joining forces with you to address SDGs? Is it primarily through joint proposals?
Yes and no, and both. I think it can be both, Carl. I think it can be joint proposals, but I think also it's just to get each other better, to know each other better. Simply also to have some knowledge about what each of us are doing. I know what a lot of people are doing, but I'm also all the time experiences people that are sitting close to me or working in an area close to me which I didn't knew about. So it both, I think.
Okay, and I think this is also for you, as we have time. I think I see a question: how to define an appropriate baseline for environmental quality in an area or a city?
Yeah, it depends a lot about what you're looking at, right? If I understand the question correctly, I just look at the question myself now, how to define an appropriate, because the baseline is depending a lot on which kind of cities you are looking in. For example, I'm in my research with climate adaptation, we are always discussing how to find the best methods to treat stormwater, for example, water that are running off the streets and the impermeable areas in the cities. And a lot of the solutions that are used for that is actually nature-based solutions. because those solutions are often the best ways of coping with the challenge. But at the same time, those nature-based solutions can also have a value for biodiversity, for environmental quality. And of course, it's not nature. It's not true nature. But at the same time, we are also having 13% of Denmark is now urban areas or infrastructure, including roads. So we have also lost a lot of our nature habitats, not only in the cities, but also in the open land. And that also means that we have also lost a lot of the habitats that were earlier acting as stepstones for flora and fauna. So by implementing some of these technical nature-based solutions in the cities, which are of course not true nature, but then you are still adding new stepstones, or sometimes I call it new nature in the city, which is of course not, it cannot cope with what we have lost, but it's putting new habitats into the cities with the baseline what we have for nature or environmental quality in the city now. So it's just one example on how it's very difficult to say what that baseline actually is, because it also depends on the city.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. I see several other interesting questions, but we have to move on in the interest of time now. There might be a little time at the very end. I'm not entirely sure, but I would encourage people also to get in contact after this live session with researchers with questions they would like to have answered and they didn't have time to hear. So thank you very much, Sarah, for this very presentation. So next. We move on to Changzhu Wu, who is a DS Fellow and an Associate Professor at the Department of Physics, Chemistry and Pharmacy. And he explores the field of enzyme catalysis using chemistry methods to engineer better enzymes. We look forward to see the video. So let's please show that now.
In society, we often strive to becoming more productive. This is especially true in the industry sector. Future industry should be productive, but at the same time, and more importantly, future industry should not be polluting. This is what I strive for. A clean future is what drives me as a chemistry researcher. I want to develop a new technology for green production of chemicals and drugs. For this purpose, I'm particularly curious about using enzymes to replace traditional production of chemicals and drugs because of their high efficiency and green operation conditions. In my lab, I engineer different enzymes with synthetic chemical materials, which can not only make enzymes stronger, but also create new-to-nature properties for applications. Our study has the potential to lay the foundation for next-generation enzyme engineering. This will not only contribute to new green technology, but also to the green transition. In the future, industries should not be polluting. My name is Changzhu Wu, and I am a researcher.
Okay, thank you very much for this video, Changzhu, this very ambitious program. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mats. Yeah, hello again. So I'm Changzhu Wu from FKF. As you saw from my video, and I plan to use biological catalyst enzymes to produce industry chemicals and drugs. The reason for such a plan is that using enzyme neither generates pollution nor requires intensive energy. Instead, they can work for industry under physiological conditions. Therefore, it's a very green process. And however, using enzyme for industry and can be still challenging for two reasons. And number one, the enzymes are not stable outside of living cells. And number two, and they may not have the catalytic functions for industry applications of your own interest. And to these two problems, my lab has now two solutions. First, and we prepare a strong materials that can encapsulate enzyme in order to protect them for a long period of industry operation. So this is now called enzyme immobilization. So my team here at SDU are the only one research group in Denmark and for the enzyme, focusing on enzyme immobilization. And moreover, secondly, and we also modify enzymes with active chemical components to give enzyme and new to nature properties for new applications of for your interest applications. So which is also called enzyme modification. And with this immobilization and modification approaches, and we hope we are able to not only make enzymes stronger, but also generate new functions for different applications in the industry. So overall, so we use chemical approaches to engineering enzyme for better industry and for the future green industry. And from the previously presentation from Sebastian, and then we know that the zero emission is important steps for our future green transitions. So I'm trying to contribute a bit for the zero production in the industry. So thank you very much for the attention. So now I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Changsu. So I will give the word both to the panelists and to the audience to ask a few questions.
I would like to ask a question if I can.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Changsu, what about the chemistry industry? What do they say to your ideas here? Are they responsive, or do they support your research, or how do they react, the industry?
Oh, okay, so for example, I have collaborated Novo Enzymes, and I talked to them a couple of times, and they are very interesting for sure, because they know that right now the technology that they have is they need to be developed and to compete with the rest of the world. And so if we all agree that if we can increase the enzyme functions for application for different operation in the industry, this is not only interest for their own company to increase their own competitions in the market, but also it will be important for Denmark and also for the world, because we can use more enzymes and for produce different products and at zero pollution conditions. So I think they are very interesting and for sure. But yeah, so we are trying now to working together and with some small project at the beginning.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a couple of questions here in the chat. So there is a person asking what are some concrete examples of how enzymes are applied in the industry, and I guess there are a large number of examples, but maybe also which examples you have in mind, you envision.
Actually, enzyme is used in the industry and for hundreds of years already. And for example, they produce the beers. And for example, and used in the laundry and as the detergent, and for example, and produce the food and also the wines. So in the industry, it's already widely existing for a long time already. But there's a very emerging and also promising industry. It's the drug. It's the pharmaceutical industry. And over there, and normally we are using the chemical approaches to synthesize different very difficult, complicated chemical drugs, and which is actually the traditional process is very toxic and also very time consuming and a lot of environmental problems. So now the one of the important feature of the enzymes, you can just use the biological catalyst to run the reactions to produce the drugs in the water and in the room temperature. You only use one steps to make these drugs in a very easy way. So this is a very sustainable and a very future very green refresh of the using enzymes for the green industry in the future. Yeah. So there's a number of, as I said, there's a number of applications already in the past, but in the future, and I think one of the very promising future is using enzyme to produce great drugs and under zero pollution conditions.
Sorry, I was muted. So there's a very quickly, maybe a follow-up question I think you've partially answered. Are there any examples of companies scaling up enzyme-based industrial production?
Oh, yeah, they do, and there's a lot now. There's a lot, and for example, Novo Enzymes. Yeah, Novo Enzymes is and has a number of larger scale procedures. For example, as I said, that they're using the enzymes to produce the food, and also, for example, in the Carlsberg, they use a long time with enzyme to produce the beers, and in the future, and of course not right now. And if you see the drugs in the market and the pharmaceutical drugs in the market, and more than 70% of drugs, and they need to involve at least one time with enzyme to produce the drugs. And otherwise, if you use the chemical approach, and it will be very time-consuming and a very toxic process probably. So and right now, using enzyme is it's already a lot. But as I said in my presentation, and it's the challenge. It's still a challenge. The number one challenge is the enzyme is easy to die in the industry conditions. Yeah, because they are working very good at home in the field. Yeah, but if you bring them outside of the field, then it's going to be a challenge. They are easy to die. And also, the enzyme is produced by natural bacteria in most of the case. But they do have their own natural properties. But if you want to use the enzyme to produce the new functions, to produce new drugs, for example, they cannot do the job yet. So that is my task now. So we want to make them stronger, and we want to give them new functions by chemical approach. Yes, so that is my answer now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cheng-Su. Very interesting and very exciting research front here. We have to now move on. In the interest of time, we have quite tight schedule. So for the next speaker, I'm very happy to introduce Rasmus Siersbæk. Rasmus is an assistant professor at the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, and he studies the spread of breast cancer cells to other organs and the implications from such spreading using tools like proteomics and genomics. So please go ahead and play the video of Rasmus.
Jeg er nysgerrig, især på sammenhænge i naturen. Hvordan fungerer vores celler i kroppen, og hvordan kommunikerer cellerne med hinanden? Der er mange ting, vi ikke ved endnu, og vi ved aldrig helt, hvornår eller hvor den næste nye opdagelse kommer. Som forsker er der intet, der slår følelsen af at opdage noget hidtil ukendt. Det er det, der driver mig i min forskning. Jeg forsker i brystkræft. Det er et udfordrende detektivarbejde. Det giver mig mulighed for at samarbejde tæt med de dygtigste forskere fra både Danmark og udlandet. Det er en meget dynamisk og givende måde at arbejde på. Vi undersøger, hvordan kræftceller fungerer og hvordan de interagerer med de raske celler i kroppen. Det er afgørende viden, hvis vi skal forstå de mekanismer, der styrer udviklingen og spredningen af kræftceller. Det er viden, der potentielt kan betyde en stor forskel for patienter med brystkræft i fremtiden. Jeg håber, at vores forskning vil føre til nye behandlingsmuligheder, der kan redde flere liv. Mit navn er Rasmus Siersbæk, og jeg er forsker.
Okay, and welcome to you, Rasmus.
Thank you.
Thank you for this very nice video, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Mads. So as I hope it was clear from the video, I work in the cancer field. In particular, we're trying to understand the biology behind breast cancer, which is the most common type of cancer affecting women. So I'm very much working in the Sustainable Developmental Goal number 3. So one of the hallmarks of cancer is this uncontrolled growth of cells, and many of the drugs that are used in the clinic to treat breast cancer patients, they target this exact process, and they've been very efficient and have resulted in much better prognoses for women with breast cancer. But it's clear that patients with breast cancer don't actually die from the primary tumor in the breast. They die from secondary tumors that form when the cancer cells spread to other parts of the body, such as the lung and the liver and the brain. And although we know that this process is very, very important clinically, we don't really understand the mechanisms behind this process and how the cells change, how the cancer cells change when they spread from the primary tumor in the breast. And we're certainly not in a position to actually target this process in the clinic when treating patients. So this is really the process that I'm focusing on in my lab, trying to understand the biology behind this spreading of cancer cells to other parts of the body. And one of the really interesting aspects of this is that we know now that the healthy cells of the body can actually signal to the cancer cells to induce this change in the cancer cells that allows them to spread to other parts of the body and result in this fatal disease. So we're trying to really understand this crosstalk between the healthy cells and the cancer cells and how maybe we can block that process in the future to help breast cancer patients. So I think with that, I'll stop here and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Rasmus. I will give the opportunity now to the panel and to the audience to ask questions to Rasmus's highly relevant research here. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll try again.
Yeah, Marianne, okay.
So thank you, Rasmus, for the presentation of your work. So I'm happy to see that you also find this is very relevant for the SDGs. And now we talk about, I mean, cancer. That is like almost a global phenomenon that we have. But I don't know if we. What about? Is it something that is or can be applied everywhere? Your results, are they of interest sort of everywhere?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So I think, like you say, this is a huge problem, not just in Denmark, but worldwide. And obviously, the treatments are much better in sort of the Western part of the world. And some cancers are actually more often found in African American women, for example, when it comes to breast cancer. And trying to understand these mechanisms and really understand how they work, that allows us to much better tailor these treatments, and potentially we can find treatments that are perhaps more easily spread out to other parts of the body of the world, because I think that's a key challenge now. We do pretty well when it comes to cancer treatment in the Western part of the world, but for example in Africa it's a different story. So having treatments that are cheap and can easily be sort of spread out to the whole world, I think that's definitely a challenge going forward.
Thank you for that answer, Rasmus. I see a question here from Jamile Javid asking, do you consider any nature-based solutions? There are some marine organisms that showed anti-cancer features. Any interest?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Actually, so there's a lot of the drugs that are, at least some of the drugs that are used now to treat cancer patients, even some of the chemotherapies, they are from nature, and they're actually extracted from plants or natural products. So I think that there's a huge resource in nature that we can definitely exploit. A lot of big efforts now are trying to focus on how can we take all these different compounds that are out there and then trying to screen them to see are they actually effective, for example, in cancer treatment. So there are huge efforts trying to do exactly that, and I think there's a huge resource we should definitely take advantage of for sure.
Thank you very much. Maybe I can ask, so you said your approach is biological. Do you work with chemists, or do you see any, even let's say physics? I mean, the physics of membranes, cell membranes in these communication processes between the cells?
Yeah. So definitely. I mean, actually, the spreading of these cells from sort of a breast tumor to other parts of the body, that's that involves proteins that are sort of on the surface of the cells, and trying to target those would be hugely interesting and something that is actively pursued in several labs around the world. And we know that these changes on these surface proteins, they are really important. So if you can sort of identify exactly what pathway to target, I think teaming up with chemists is an obvious next step, because they will have definitely insight into how to do that in the best way. So now it's about sort of initially, can we identify what are the important pathways? And once we know that, and we know that targeting those pathways makes a difference, then it's about teaming up with chemists, looking to nature. Can we then find compounds that can be given to patients to actually treat cancer?
Thank you very much. So if you can answer very quickly, I don't know if you can, but there's a final question here. Natural compounds are currently hard to patent. Do you see a solution to this obstacle? That's probably going back to this previous questions of using nature-based solutions.
Yeah, no, so that's a tricky question, because that's true. That is, for a natural compound to actually be used, it has to be taken up by a company that's actually willing to produce it. And since they can't make a patent, that limits their willingness to pursue those kinds of drugs. And maybe that's why, even though we have some natural compounds that are used, it's actually not that many. And what they tend to do is they tend to take a natural compound and then modify it slightly, and then they can make a patent. I think that's an obstacle we should probably try to remove that, so that we can actually take advantage of these natural compounds. Because it is a shame if we only look at the commercial aspects of this and not use the resources available in nature. Sorry, that was a long question or a long answer. But
oh, that's very fine. Thank you very much, Rasmus. That was great to get that answered as well. So with that, yeah, I say thank you to Rasmus, and we will move on. We will come back now again to chemistry, but a different aspect of chemistry. The next video will feature Ulla Bro Nielsen. Ulla, she's a professor at the Department of Physics, Chemistry, and Pharmacy. Her research that focuses on developing NMR spectroscopy of paramagnetic materials, and in particular, as also Sebastian commented on phosphate recovery from wastewater. She's also this year's recipient of the Fyns Stiftstidende, the paper's yearly research prize. So please go ahead and play Ulla's video.
Som kemiker udvikler og undersøger jeg materialer, der binder sig til fosfat. Fosfat er blevet en kritisk ressource, og i Europa har vi slet ikke nok. Samtidig er overskydende fosfat et problem i vores vandmiljø. Derfor vil jeg udvikle de bedste og mest bæredygtige materialer til at fange fosfat igen. Det kræver, at vi forstår kemien bag. Jeg vil være med til at sikre, at vi i fremtiden genbruger vores fosfat, i stedet for konstant at skulle udvinde nyt. I min forskning får jeg lov at arbejde med nogle avancerede instrumenter, der præcist viser, hvordan vores nye materialer binder fosfat. For mig er der som at sidde med et puslespil, hvor man ikke kender motivet på forhånd. Hver eneste måling og materialeanalyse giver en ny brik til puslespillet. Det er et stort og udfordrende detektivarbejde. Mit navn er Ulla Bro Nielsen, og jeg er forsker.
Okay, thank you very much for this video. And now I'd like to give the word to Ulla herself.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening in today. The video showed one of my most mature projects. So the goal of my research is to understand the chemical pathway from waste to resource. And this is a project where we're developing new materials that can convert phosphate as a waste product and pollutant in wastewater, and then chemically can extract it and turn it into, for instance, a fertilizer. This is a project where I work already now with industry, with a local wastewater treatment plant, with biologists, and we test the materials under realistic conditions. But we're also using advanced characterization techniques, especially a technique called NMR spectroscopy, which you may know as MRI at the hospital that gives pictures of you. And we can use those techniques to mine for phosphate at wastewater treatment plants, basically to see where do we have the most and what is the chemical form of it. And as part of that, as Mads introduced, I developed this NMR. And paramagnetism, well, it's hard to explain in 2 minutes, but you know iron is magnetic, you know it from the fridge magnet in your home. And we can change or tune these magnetic properties, for instance, to fish phosphate out from the wastewater using a simple electromagnet. But it also influences the methods we use, and we need to understand how it influences. And for that, I collaborate with theoretical physicists and with other chemists. And to understand, so these are like quantum effects, and we're at a much lower level. We're still in the lab. We don't right now have an application, but it's envisioned that these quantum effects will play a big role and solve some of the problems we have in the future, and controlling these and understanding these. So my research really spans from out at the wastewater treatment plant to back in the lab. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ulla. And with that, I invite again the panel and the audience to ask questions for Ulla's research.
Okay, I'll start again.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Ulla, I know that you're thinking about really closing the cycle of phosphorus so that we can save, you know, the resources we have. So with the material, or now you are trying to extract it out from the wastewater treatment plants, and what is then the next step?
Well, the next step, right now we have identified a material that has a high affinity for phosphate, but it's right now a white powder. And you know, if you put a white powder into wastewater, it's impossible to get up again. So now we're trying to impregnate it on like a filter material, kind of like the filters you can see, you know, when you clean water at home, that you can simply have things come through. We've also played with magnetism, with nanomaterials. So imagine you take like a little magnet and you simply just fish out in the pole. But we found out that they also are unstable. So we're actually in a new project going with, you know, anchoring on a filter, basically on a box that you can put in the water, and then when it's saturated, you take it out and you regenerate it. So it's much easier rather than doing everything in the big chemistry pot.
So to get that last part to work, do you need, so do you then need a fairly large magnetic field to actually have a, if I understand the process correctly, to actually be able to gather phosphate from a sizable area, or this is not a challenge?
No, you can use a standard electromagnet, but there are some problems with small particles, etc. But you're using the affinity that phosphate in the environment binds, especially to iron minerals, and iron minerals are magnetic. And so in the wastewater treatment plant, you dose iron and actually make the same type of iron minerals. And they're so magnetic that you can fish them out with, say, a standard electromagnet that you also use at a, you know, when you have wrecked cars or cars, you know, you can just fish it out, anything magnetic or iron plates.
Yeah, very interesting. Are there any other? We still have a few minutes for questions for Ulla. Otherwise, I will continue with questions. I think we should let somebody else ask if there is.
Yeah.
I mean, I was wondering if are there any concrete quantum effects? I mean, you see in the future here, or could you elaborate a little bit on that? I mean, are there quantum aspects not yet understood that could actually help here? Or
so it is controlling the iron and getting the right iron minerals that have the right magnetic properties. It's also if you want to make iron-based sorbents, like that they have the magnetic properties. But you could also go in a completely different way. So this is a fundamental aspect of iron. And for instance, in we talk about like quantum materials in the future, where you can control the spin in electronics, you can make superconductors, etc. And it's things we don't understand yet to control. So here we're really back in fundamental research. So we need to sort of understand, we have ideas, but we can't say, in 5 years, we're going to use it for exactly this. So it's a much more, say, open field. You're in unexplored territory, but I think there will be applications.
Yeah, very good. I think actually questions have ticked in. Sorry, I have not. So actually, yeah, this is my bad. I have not kept an eye. How easily can phosphorus be separated from iron is a question here. I don't know if you have partially answered that.
So you can dissolve it again chemically. You can play with the chemical conditions. You can also use iron as the support, and then you coat your active material around it. So it's actually something else that binds, and then you can, with say, changing the pH, you can simply re-release it again and maintain your iron. So they don't have to be part. But that's what people are working on. Maybe even you can apply it like directly on the field. So
I think there's also a follow-up to Marianne's question. Is the plan to make these filters a part of a rensningsanlæg, so a purification plant, or somewhere else in the wastewater process? And maybe adjoining that, there's another question about what about the cost? Is it competitive technology? Yeah.
Right. So right now, it is not a competitive technology. In general, it's something we'd like to use both at a wastewater treatment plant, but also I'd say if you have a lake or runoff from a city where you collect polluted rainwater, a filter material. And it's definitely, you know, we're testing and we are not yet at the stage where it's competitive. I mean, the materials we use are produced on the ton scale by catalytic companies. So it's something you can make on a large scale. So but the idea of ours is that we can regenerate and recycle, and that reduces the cost.
So the vision is that it can become competitive. It can.
Right.
Yeah. There's also a final question from Gary Banta, at least on my list here that I see. Where in the phosphorus use and flow cycle is it best to reduce or recover the phosphorus? Pre-use or post-use?
That's a good question. And it's I mean, yes, we right now focus on wastewater, but when you talk to Vandcenter Syd, the local wastewater treatment company, they have so many other recovery processes going. For instance, they would like to make biogas, so we can't say it's the ideal. We can say it's the ideal place here, but they'll say, no, we need to do biogas production to get electricity and lower our CO2. So right now we're looking at reject water because we have a high concentration of phosphate. We have, say, fairly not clean water, but yeah, that's right now where we're going.
Okay, thank you very much, Ulla. I think we made it through the questions, although I didn't spot them initially. I hope we did. Otherwise, please again get in contact with Ulla or any of the other researchers if you haven't had your question answered in the session. Okay, so with that, thank you very much, Ulla.
Thank you.
And we will move on to our next and final speaker on the list. Of course, Marianne will also talk at the end, but among our 5 researchers featured here. So our final speaker is Fernando Colchero. He's an associate professor at the Department of Mathematics and Computer Science, IMARTA. And he employs mathematics, statistics, and demography to study mortality and fertility in wild animal populations. And I've also seen him actually socialize with some of these rather large wild animals when Googling Fernando. So maybe you can comment on that later on. I don't know if there's some interesting stories there, but please go ahead and show Fernando's video.
Curiosity has been a crucial driver in my research. I am originally trained as an ecologist. However, I have always been passionate about using mathematics and statistics to understand the natural systems I study. It was that curiosity to explore the power of mathematics that drove me to spend hours studying, doing derivations and redoing proofs. In short, discovering the beauty of mathematics. I use mathematics and statistics to understand what shapes demographic rates in natural environments, for instance, in response to aging or changes in the weather, and how these determine population dynamics and spatial processes such as animal movement. Translating these into mathematical models, we can use them to predict how populations will cope with disturbances, exploitation or climate change. Hence, my research has helped to inform and establish management plans for species of commercial and conservation value. The most exciting thing about being a researcher is coming up with a new original idea, succeeding in implementing it and seeing it come to fruition. My name is Fernando Colchero and I am a researcher.
Thank you very much for this video, Fernando. We've moved from the microscopic now to the macroscopic, and I give the word to you to follow up.
Thank you, Mats, and thank you and Nina and Tina for putting together this. It's definitely an honor to be part of this panel. And yes, to answer your comment about the big cats, as I mentioned in the video, in my previous life I used to be an ecologist, and I used to work in the jungles of Central America and Mexico, and we were capturing jaguars at the time, putting GPS collars. Now, I want to mention that I am also a member of the interdisciplinary Center on Population Dynamics, and this is because, well, to give you a bit of a background of why I ended up being part of this panel is that I was asked to make a video for first year students in mathematics about the role of mathematics in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And my take and the conclusion of the video is that mathematics can affect and can be super relevant for any of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So it's a bit putting mathematics out there, and because the issue is that people believe that, and particularly when you're in a department of and mathematicians tend to be very theoretical, and there's a lot of basic science being done, there's this notion that it's completely separated from reality, and that's not the point. And one example is what I do, and what many other of my colleagues are doing is this combination of statistical inference to understand natural systems, in my case, understanding what determines population dynamics, and then using mathematics and many of the methods that are used in other aspects of mathematics to simulate populations and predict. This is used, for example, when we want to assign quotas for fishing quotas. Well, if we have a more or less of a good understanding of what is the demography by using mathematical models and using statistics to understand this, we can then use the demography. So, for example, the survival rates and the fecundity rates, and project that into the future and shocking that system. And one way of shocking the system is saying, well, what happens if the fishing is targeting only the oldest adults? No, what happens to the population? How many can we take out? How much is that going to affect fecundity and therefore, at the end, the chances for the population to persist? So in terms of sustainability, this is fundamental. It's the same when you assign hunting quotas, for example. We need to understand how the population is doing. But many times, the only way we can do that is by using mathematical methods and simulations to predict what happens with this population. So in a nutshell, a lot of what I do has to do with that. And that would be all for me.
Thank you very much, Fernando. I certainly couldn't be agreeing more with you that mathematics is highly important.
Absolutely.
And also very timely, given the recent reviews of Danish school students' mathematical performance. I think examples like this are very important, right, to stimulate the interest in mathematics.
Yes, we need to stimulate it, definitely.
Yeah. So I would, we have time for questions for Fernando.
So I can start again while questions are coming in. So Fernando, I fully agree and appreciate your work there. But then coming from the biology side, what about the data? I mean, how much data do we have, and is it an issue? I mean, you need some data to be able to do your models.
Absolutely, and that is absolutely crucial. There, we published recently a paper where led by Dalia Conde from the biology department, where we analyze how much information for all the 32,000 species of terrestrial tetrapods, how much demographic information do we have to be able to do what I just described. And we only have information for about 1.5% of the species. So one of the things that we're really interesting to do, and this is something that we are discussing within CPOP, the Interdisciplinary Center on Population Dynamics, is how to fill up knowledge gaps. And there's many ways in which we can do it, but it requires a very strong backbone in mathematics, because what we need to do is find relationships with other species. And it also needs a very good understanding of the biology and the evolution of the species, how we can inform for those species where we don't have information. Can we use information from similar or related species, and also from captivity? So we have access to zoo data, which is proving to be super important and crucial to doing these things. But definitely, so data is fundamental, and the more we can fill up those knowledge gaps, the better.
So while we wait for questions to in, I think we have one now. Sorry. Yes, there's a question here from Gary Banta. He's asking, following up on Marianne's question, with an unfair follow-up question. He says, should data drive models, or should models drive data collection?
Should data drive models? You know, what needs to drive the model is the question that you have. And you have to build a model in, and you know, I do a lot of developing models, statistical models for ecological data where you may not have that much information. But what needs to drive the model is the question, although you have to adapt the model to the amount of data you have, to the data collection, to the part that has to do with the data collection, those kinds of things. But yeah, I guess in a nutshell, that's my answer.
Maybe I can ask a vaguely related, if that answers to Gary, maybe I can ask a vaguely related question, which maybe also puts this on a bit of a spot, but could you imagine reversing this, that if you are able to model demographic spreads like this and evolutions, can you go back in historical records? I don't know if there's enough data in evolution to actually use this to infer climate behavior in the past?
Short answer, I haven't even tried, but one thing that I know that has been used is reconstructions of climate based not on demography, but based, for example, on tree coring and things like that. Yes. And of course, so but in terms of trying to reconstruct the past demography, the link with climate is a bit complicated. But I might be wrong. There was one project at some point that we were trying to reconstruct the survival trajectories for dinosaurs based on bone data that were collected, I believe, in China in a site where they were really well preserved. We were not able to do that project. But going from there to then reconstructing climate, that's a tough one.
So we actually, in the program now, we actually have a few minutes. So before thanking our speakers, I would invite everybody a last chance to ask a question, and I guess we could open the floor to ask questions for any of our researcher presentations for a few minutes now. And while you think about it, I would also, as Fernando already mentioned, thank you very much, Fernando. I think we should thank our organizers behind the scenes, Nina Bjørnskov and Tina Elle, who's here from the Natural Science faculty. It's been very great, and also Louise from the IT department. Yes, I don't think even in the Q&A you can raise your clapping, but we thank you very much for at least we can do it here. I think we should bring up all the speakers on the screen. Just give a second for people if they might have. You can also see if there was something. Actually, I think there's maybe this is a question for you, Marianne. A question we didn't have time to answer. Caroline Löscher was asking: is there a funding initiative within SDU to promote climate modeling or SDG relevant modeling?
Unfortunately, right now the strategic pool of funding is very limited. But I know that Sebastian, he's really reaching, our Sebastian Mernil, our pro-rector, he's really reaching out to all climate and SDG researchers at the moment, trying to either develop some networks or small groups with the intention of trying to go for some external funding. So he's also discussing with several foundations about these initiatives that we have at SDU to try to raise funding. So for the moment, there's not a lot. There's a pool actually for the students, and I know that we just discussed it at the board today, that there's an opportunity for the students still to apply for some SDG funding. There will be a new call in the spring.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marianne. Then I see here there's a question from Lisa Younger for all the speakers, whether these talks have inspired new collaborations to you. This is addressed to you, the speakers, because you're the only ones who can answer in a short time. Have you seen new potential in hearing these talks? Of course, the format is very short. I mean, we're time limited, of course, in this way, but. Yeah, Ulla, please go ahead.
So I think we represent quite different areas of natural science, and I know Sarah, I'm collaborating closely with her colleagues over in ecology already. So I would say that's the most sort of obvious for me, whereas the others are, yeah, in a different area of science.
I would say that actually hearing Fernando's talk makes me realize that there's probably a lot of possibilities for collaborating with mathematicians in building these models for we tend to have quite a lot of data, so actually using that for building mathematical models. I know that's been done in the past, and that something really interesting can actually come from that. So that's probably an opportunity to pursue further, I think.
Yes, and same on this on my end with Rasmus. It's interesting because I am part of a consortium of people that are analyzing the evolution of cancer. So and that touches a lot with what Rasmus is doing. So yes, definitely.
Yeah, I think I would agree a lot with what Ulla says. You know, during Ulla's talk, I was thinking of something that we discussed, I think 2 years ago, Ulla, that I was thinking, okay, we have to bring that up again and continue that talk. So that inspired me during your talk, and regarding Fernando's talk, I was also sitting thinking about some statistics that I need to cope with in the coming time, and it could be Fernando or it could be somebody else of your colleagues, but I think it's not necessarily, for me, it's not necessarily that you think of a collaboration with this specific person that you listen to, but also that you're just getting thoughts about collaborations or area where there could be some collaborations within the more broader research area that the researcher is talking about. So for me, it has been great to listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same here.
So I think yeah, you know, the enzyme is a university tour. Yeah, I see there are a number of different application possibilities. For example, with my colleague Ulla, yeah, so probably we can put the enzyme into your particle beads that is able to decompose the phosphate, for example. Yeah.
So people are already immobilizing enzymes on the materials I study, for instance, for catalysis. So it's easy to recover. So yeah, we should.
So there's from this amazing platform for the talking here. So we can discuss in the next few years maybe for the possible collaborations. Of course, I mean, enzyme, it can be also reported, it can be used for treat the cancers here, but that's something a bit out of my my expertise now. But we can also discuss it, I mean, in the future, for example, with Osmos about to use some special proteins and enzymes for the cancer treatments. Yeah, so there's a lot of chance in the future.
Okay, thank you very much to you all. Thanks a lot for these thoughts on future possibilities. So I think it would be we're not quite done yet, but I think for this research part, I think it would be appropriate to end with Flemming Rasmussen, who has written a comment here. So I'll just read it out. Flemming has a background in political science and psychology. I'm not sure how much of the academic content I fully understand, yet it's amazingly motivating to sense the academic pride and desire to make a difference. Good initiative. So that is to you, the researchers. And I fully agree. So it's been some great talks. It's certainly also stirred some thoughts with me. So thank you, and I hope that goes for everyone. Thank you very much. Before we end, I would like to give the word to Marianne Holmer, our Dean of the Faculty of Science, and she will give some concluding remarks. Please go
Yes,
ahead.
well, thank you very much, Mads, and also thank you all to all the speakers for those very exciting short presentations here. Of course, we are struggling with the format, but I found it important that we are continuing to also share our research at the Faculty of Science. So I hope you enjoyed this format. The plan is to have 2 more of these live sessions on SDGs in the spring. And I hope to see many of you there also, and also please bring your colleagues and students to this event. Sorry. At the same time, now that we are close to Christmas, I would also like to thank you all for all the efforts you have done during this year. It has been a troublesome year, no doubt about that, with all the pandemic and the lockdown, and now we're in lockdown again, and suddenly everybody had to be flexible and change the teaching from almost overnight, and now we are discussing all the exams, how to handle the exams in January. So it has been a tough year to be a teacher at the Faculty of Science. And it has also been really tough for you to do your research. But I'm very glad to see how engaged you are in your research, and we actually have managed quite well at the faculty. What I see here for during this pandemic is that there's a huge demand for the skills that we have at the Faculty of Science. With all the STEM competences, they are needed in our society to be able to understand, for instance, the pandemic. We have had some researchers modeling the spread of the virus, and we have others working with different parts of the COVID-19. So it was possible for us to step in right away to work with this. But then I also see all the global challenges that have been discussed just today, and we just had 5 speakers today. There are a lot of topics, as also Sebastian Mernil pointed out, that we are working on here at the Faculty of Science. So we are building this strategy now again at the Faculty of Science, and I think it has been very exciting to discuss what to have in our coming strategy for the next 5 years. And I see many possibilities for further developing our research, both in the SDGs and in STEM in general. And one of the topics that are very high on the priority list is to collaborate across the departments at the faculty. And this initiative is just one way where you can get to know each other much better than just from looking at a website and trying to do the detective work to find your colleague at another department. So again, I hope you have enjoyed this this format, and we will ask for your comments to this live session, and then see how to proceed in spring. But so yeah, again, thanks all of you, and then I would also like to take this opportunity to wish you all the best for the holidays, the upcoming holidays. They are definitely not as we had hoped that they could be. It's changing like every day almost. I must admit, I got a shock yesterday. I just had to go and buy a single Christmas present in Rosengård Center before returning to Nyborg, and I was it was completely full. I couldn't even find a parking space, so I was not aware that things had changed while I've been just away from the computer for like 1 or 2 hours, and then suddenly Rosengård Center was full. But anyway, I hope that you get the opportunity to get a little bit away from the screens. I think we've been looking into the screens for a long time now, and I think it's important that we try to get away from them, and then that you can celebrate the holidays it will be with your near family and your near friends. But I hope that can then give you a peaceful time for the next 1 or 2 weeks. And a biologist as I am, there's something out there you can always enjoy. So I hope you have time to get out also into nature and enjoy life in that way. So thank you all for this year, and then I'm looking much forward to seeing you back next year and continue our important research and teaching within SDGs and the STEM. So, Mads, are you back? This was from me.
Thank you very much, Marianne. But I think we should leave that the final words in any case from you. But also for me, thanks to everybody. It was a pleasure and great questions.